of course, this is what she has. This is what she's going to write about. Why shouldn't she? Although I think she could be a little bit more critical of the era than she is.
I think she has a hard time being that way because she lived it.
Of course, this is what she has. This is what she has. And I think she also, I've heard her, she doesn't view that as her. Oh, but I'm like, first, you could mention. So like, there were no.
There were what?
No women there.
Well,
Like-
that's pretty obvious in a lot of those.
I am
photos.
also.
So she could mention.
All right, hello, everyone. It's 6 o'clock and I'll call the September 9th meeting of the Bethlehem Public Library Board of Trustees to order. First item on the agenda is public participation. None? Okay. Next item on the agenda is review of previous meeting minutes, pages 2 through 7 in the board packet. Anyone have any questions or changes? Okay, I'll take a motion to accept.
My only question was, does Mark still sign it or do you sign? It is Mark's name on the end of the minutes.
I haven't signed it in the past.
Do you know where it says on the bottom?
So it's my understanding that it's president.
Okay. It just occurred to me when I was reviewing it. I was like,
Very good. That's a good question. Yeah.
All right, so I'll take a motion to accept the previous meeting minutes. Gail, a second. Laura, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Next item is the financial report. Sherry?
Okay, so, we're 2 months into the new fiscal year. We have on the revenue side received, close to 24,000 in state aid, or about 91% of the budget. We usually get the remainder in November, so that's, seems to be right on track. Expenses are tracking very similarly to last year at this time. I did want to make a note that, to date, we've spent 1.1 million on the architect fees and site development costs for the building project. Our fund balance currently stands at about 3.9 million. The auditors are here this week, finishing up field work. And we expect to have audited financial statements in time for the November board meeting. We'll probably get them towards the end of October. We'll have a finance committee meeting to review them before the board meeting. We don't expect anything unusual or any difficulties. They've only been here for a day so far this week, but things have been going smooth. And I don't know if anybody has any questions about the report, the actual numbers. Happy to answer anything that can.
You need a motion?
Well, are you finished with the update then?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, if
I
anybody
thought
has
he
any,
was gonna scroll through and you still had another comment, no?
no, there really isn't. I mean, hasn't been a lot of activity because it's only been 2 months. So there's nothing unusual, nothing to really point out that is different, unexpected.
Okay. All right, so I'll take a motion to accept the treasurer's update.
So moved.
A second.
I'll second.
And all those in favor? Opposed? Carries. All right, next item is personnel report. And I assume the personnel committee.
Hi, yes. So, Gail and I got feedback after the last meeting from Jeff and from Frank and also from the librarians about the issue of potentially trying to keep the 16-hour-a-week part-time library assistant position that in the last meeting Jeff had suggested we get rid of in order to help facilitate financially bringing on a librarian 3 for youth services. So I believe you all probably saw the feedback after meeting with everyone and talking, about the budget and that we feel pretty financially stable. Our recommendation was that we go ahead and keep that full-time position. Also hoping that the that the building project will come to fruition soon and that we will be busier than ever and needing to have more staff. We took that into consideration as well. Gail, am I missing any salient points? So we need to vote on whether we're going to decide to keep that 16-hour-a-week position.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, then we'll take a vote on maintaining that 16 part-time, 16 hours a week library assistant position.
So moved.
Sarah, and second scale, all those in favor and opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, everybody.
The only other thing I would point out on, because one of the issues on that part-time position was to increase flexibility for the staff. And another thing the board could keep in mind as far as increasing flexibility is to possibly decrease some of our outreach. If this issue came up again, that is another item we might be able to do if we get to a point where we feel like we can't take on any more staff. Growth in that area, we could potentially reduce the amount of outreach that we do.
Just for clarity for the public, when you say outreach, you mean like extra, like the farmer's market, the,
Farmers market,
out-
Spinney.
After school,
Yeah.
enrichment, those sort of things.
Got it.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the director's report.
Okay, we're gonna have a lot of conversation about the building project. We'll have that later on. We can come back to this part of the report if we want to, but I'm not gonna belabor this, other than to say, similarly to the children's focus program that we had a teen focus program in August. And then the boards from that program, apparently a good interaction at that program. And then afterwards, the vision boards went out into the hallway and solicited, as you can see here, elicited just a ton of responses from the public. Not everybody who was making comments understood that this was focused on the teen services. It's a good opportunity. I mean, people just want to say whatever they want to say, but many of them were focused on teens and services to teens. So we were pleased with just the amount of comments that we got from folks on the project. And so they're all there. Those comments, those pictures have been sent along to our architects so they can incorporate them into the project going forward. So I just wanted to call that out specifically. Then and that idea for that project came from one of the public services.
Okay, great.
We'll talk about the meeting room policy as well, just to let you know that the staff person who's most directly responsible for sort of implementing our policy has issued a sort of implementation report on that, just to add some further context to that question as we just wanted to just mention that we've been trying to encourage caretakers and kids to actively participate in neatening up the space as they're using the space. And last month was a particularly challenging one. So I just think it's important to mention that this happens. Sometimes folks just leave the room as it is. So
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
There we go. How often are the toys cleaned?
like,
Like washed and
Sanitized?
disinfected and, yes,
I don't have the answer to that.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't understand why this is even a concern. It's life, and it seems to me that
It
the
is.
staff should just be picking up what's left.
It is, and we
I
do.
think going to people who are using the library, who are managing 2 or 3 kids, or maybe has a quiet kid or whatever, should not have a staff member come up to them and say, hey, I know your kid's crying, but we need you to clean up this and put it away. I just don't see why.
I don't think anybody's approaching a crying child and saying, get on this, but it's
I know,
not.
I'm exaggerating, I agree.
Right,
I'm
but it's not bad for us to say, hey, by the way, if you've got every vegetable of the vegetable thing out, it's not a terrible idea to put those back in the bins. I understand what you're saying, but yeah, it's a thing that we have to do.
Do we have any signage in that area?
I was gonna ask that too.
I don't.
I think there's reason, yeah,
The big
there you go.
But I think they used to give stickers away, you may still have that one. They're like, hey, come get a sticker. So.
It's good
Well,
practice
I
to
just-
encourage good stewardship. I spent the whole day cleaning up public lands. It's just good to encourage stewardship. I agree, but I think if there's signage and
There's no
maybe
T.
just a communication in like the email, like a reminder, help like leave the library better than you found it, kind of a thing.
Okay.
All right, moving on, lots of, just overall, we encouraged, one of our programs, lots and lots of walking in the community where people got to log their walking for Bethlehem Walks, which was, running along with some reading program. That's awesome. Cool fraud prevention program, the mushroom program, people love mushrooms. The folks that were there love to talk about growing mushrooms, a very interested and excited group, here in the room. Some fun reptile show, which I got to, poke my nose in on and visit with the tortoise was totally awesome. So we managed to do 2 shows. So this is our response to when this room gets full, right? So we managed to have 170 people in among those 2 shows. So that was a good one. Lots of slime time and a story walk. Lots of this Time Jump Tuesday program was over 3 sessions was popular. And try to set a world record for outreach. I know outreach is an expensive in staff time. It's an expensive service, right? And it's difficult and frequently outreach doesn't happen during like regular business hours. It happens on weekends. It happens in evenings, which makes it even a little bit more challenging. That said, like National Night Out, we interacted with 424 people there at National Night Out. Gerald the Giraffe came down and hung out there. We did do a pickup at the Spinney. They were, they're expanding the number of residents they have there. And they said, hey, we're doing a community event. And would you like to come over and sign up some people for new library cards? So we got some folks to sign up for library cards over there. Patron Point, this sort of onboarding, been hearing us talking about Patron Point since last year. It's already the e-newsletter is out there and humming. So that part of Patron Point is up and running. This is the onboarding process that will simplify and clarify the sort of relationship management portion of Patron. So that's coming imminently. We're testing it already. So that's exciting. Then we've added some new museum passes to that Tix Keeper. That's the online museum pass software that we're using. And I'd like to touch base on that sometimes we have a number of passes that are used these back-to-back checkouts, where if someone had that pass, it would have been for 3 days, and we wouldn't have had someone on a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday and then on a Monday able to use that pass because it would have been checked out for 3 days. It would have been out of circulation. So it adds a little complexity into the whole checkout scenario, but it really does make the passes more available.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's nice. It's just like any new thing, you get more features, but it adds more complexity, right? So it's just 2 sides of that coin. I'm glad that you like it. It's good, and it's but like anything, people we have to do a lot of learning, teaching for folks so they can get up to speed. Physical circulation dropped last month compared to the year over year 9%. I just like to mention that every once in a while because it's really been an upward streak for like 4 years post pandemic. So physical circulation was down, which dropped overall circulation at 4%. E-circulation was pretty steady. So Hoopla, which is one of our services, we are seeing higher use now than we did during the height of the pandemic. We literally brought it in when we weren't checking out any books at all as a supplement so that people could use simultaneous use for checkouts. And now we're seeing a higher use now than during the height of the pandemic, which means it's a service that people like. So that's interesting. Additionally, Phil's reached out to the Albany County to see if we could put Wi-Fi at the rail trail head, the new rail trail head in Slingerlands, and see if we could put Wi-Fi there. We may, the Colonial Acres has never done robust business on the Wi-Fi that we put there, so we may be looking to move that over to the rail trail where I think it would get a lot more use from a lot more people.
And when you say Colonial Acres, are you referring to their pool complex or just?
Not LMAP, just Colonial Acres, which is
No,
now.
not LMAP.
Colonial Acres, just the park. I don't know if I'm sorry.
They do,
That's
they
my
have a
ignorance.
lifeguard.
All right, so it's not, it's just
Okay.
it's just in the park. It's just
I see.
there.
Okay.
So when the town, because Colonial was not really show my ignorance, it was the golf course, right? And then the town acquired it and is using it. And then when the town acquired it, we put Wi-Fi there because it's a town product, but it doesn't get that kind of intense people use where people need to use Wi-Fi. It's, maybe like 50 a month. It's really quite low, so.
Or my mistake, I thought we were referring to the one that's in 1 month. It was
Yes.
housing.
Yes,
That's-
yeah,
okay.
sorry. And then, we have some outreach programs that I just like to reiterate to make sure that all of you know that you're invited to participate in Halloween events if you'd like to. They're super cute, and it's literally the best day to be a library director of the whole year is trick or treat morning on the 31st. We'll be here from 10 till 11 doing our preschool. They're so cute. They don't even know how to trick or treat yet. They're just doing whatever they do. They're super cute little kids. That'll be here, but we're also doing the trunk or treat, several trunk or treat events, and the story walk over there. So if you'd like to volunteer for that, just email me. I'll get you on the list.
The Ellesmere trunk or treat is the best, clearly.
That's right, right. Yeah, we don't, all the Ellesmere trunk or treat and the town trunk or treat. We love all of our trunk or treats equally.
I might be biased.
Also of note, we're coming right up on it. The Friends of the Library will hold their fall book sale fundraiser on Saturday, the 21st from 10 to 4. They're always looking for volunteers at the event. If you like it, let them know. And then just to read here, because it's so important, we get a lot of comments about donations. They'll be accepting donations on Thursday, September 19th from 12:30 to 4, and Friday, September 20th from 10:30 to 2:30. This is only their second time accepting donations. So again, they continue to dip their toe into this. But feel free, bring your books on down, and friends will sort through them, and some of them will make it into the book sale. So it should be great.
And if someone did want to volunteer, do the Friends have contact information?
They do on the
Somewhere?
website, and they have just put out their sign up genius, I think, for that. If you want, I'll get you the link. So. And then just to put it here, just for future reference, the Division of Library Development updated their landing page, and they have a whole section for libraries, library trustees. So I just link it here so you can have it.
And for anyone who I myself had to look it up because I didn't know what the new requirement was, it's 2 hours annually.
Yeah.
Professional development.
And everybody on the board already this year you're already all checked out. We've got you this year. You're good. Right.
Sure.
But always encourage continuation.
So is it per calendar year or is it election year?
It's calendar year
Okay.
for them, which
I
then
wondered
adds
how
some.
we were done this year.
The state takes our statistics on a calendar year basis. We do our statistics and everything else that we do on a school year basis. So we have to marry those two things up. But for this, the state report is a calendar year thing. So. But it can get away from you easily because those years slip by fast. So, but we're in good shape. Any questions for me about the statistics? Continue to see, I did not break my $20,000 door count number this month, which I always am trying to get over 20. But we're doing, we continue to be in, I didn't also reach my 60,000 for circulation, which was a goal. So we'll get there. That's it.
Okay.
I had a question actually for Jeff.
Yeah.
So I got in the email the other day, the course catalog for the Hill program,
Yes.
which is great. And it was still through the school. So I know we had talked about at some point, the Friends or the library working to try to assume that. Is that all off now, or?
It's not off. They are, the Friends and Hill are talking. It's not much of a public announcement, but they're in conversation. So.
Okay.
But that's, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the school you send your money to the school, so they're still involved somehow.
Correct. Yeah, they're still the money collector for Hill. That is correct.
Okay. I just think it's a great program that we should really try to figure out how to partner with.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right, next item on the agenda, the UHLS report, Lisa.
The monthly meeting is Wednesday of this week, but the services committee that I sit on has already met because we reviewed the construction grants for this year. We are going to be approving the awards at the Wednesday meeting. There were 10 awards. Curiously, half of them are roof projects this year, which kind of weird. $1.39 million in grants, and all are fully funded to their max eligibility with the exception of one, which was the largest award. So if any money comes back from other systems, just that one library will get whatever money flows to Upper Hudson. But, relatively painless this year, which is nice when that happens, but you know. And the other thing I will note is most of the awards for the libraries were the higher percentage. So based on need, you can have 50%, 75%, or 90. Most were 75 and 90, which is great when that happens.
Good, thank you. All right, next item is new business and the purchasing policy on pages 27 and 28.
So last month, there was a request from Sherry to change the limits, the purchasing limits on the purchasing policy. So I had this purchasing policy vetted by the library attorney, who basically said, you don't need to make any changes to your purchasing policy. It's in really good shape. And then just made the updates that were requested by the board, other than, you know, capitalizing the library, which is our new standard. Just changed the limits from 5,000 to 15,000 or 499, you know, 4,999, and then increased the next level up by the commensurate amount on both public works and purchases. It's just a.
And just to reiterate, the finance committee brought this forward in light of increasing costs across the board, library growth, the fact that all the spending is within our budget anyhow, and that our staff continues to spend responsibly.
And the amount hasn't changed in what, 15, 20 years? So
I think that the director should also be capitalized grammatically. So where it says purchase
Of the
discretion of the
director.
director,
You got
it
it.
should be a capital D when that's written, just in terms of grammar.
You got it.
Minor grammatical thing.
I appreciate it.
My only question is, I mean, shouldn't it be 14,999 or 15,001? Otherwise, what if you get one at 15?
Exactly 15,000. You're right. You're right.
Which
Yep.
does absolutely
It will.
happen. So anyway, I just figured maybe it should be 15,000.
You're right. 100% correct. Yes, thank you. Yep, good catch.
Okay, so are there any other questions or discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and take a vote on it.
Yeah, with that one, with that amendment, the capitalization, there's two amendments, the capitalization and the change of 15,000 to 14,999.
Make a motion to accept the policy as verbally amended here at the meeting.
Laura, okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the next item is the school district's property MOU.
Right, so this has been kicking around for a while. And I thought it was a good idea to bring it back up for consideration by the board another time. It is related to the project and all of the property transfers. This is the MOU that the school district is interested in us having in order for them to, part of the deal, to accept the 3 parcels of property, which would then be consolidated in town and allow the building project to move forward. So it doesn't have to be tied to those. Originally, we were going to pass this all as a package, but then the property transfers became appropriately part of the seeker process. So they were divorced. So I wanted to put this back up in front of you so that we can consider that.
Can you just remind us, Jeff, where this document is in the process of discussions, that this has, am I correct that this has been reviewed by both the school district attorney
Attorneys
and our
yes.
attorney? And I just want to just kind of understand the lay of the land.
Yes.
That
So
everyone, and that we have sign off from a legal perspective on this at this moment? Okay, thank you.
I have a lot of questions about it. I can go through a few items here, but I think it needs further discussion at the board level and further clarification. I'm happy to give a few ideas if people want me to, or just put it that way.
I think that's good. If you would be more comfortable, I think we could easily set up a meeting with the attorney and a view of you. and then go through some of those questions. I know
Yeah, I had some questions too.
I had some, so.
Okay, so considering that there are two board members that want to investigate this further, we'll table it for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would add when people look at it is, according to the law, the public library is an independent local miscellaneous government. The school district does not have authority. Well, I'm not talking about the MOU, I'm just talking about larger general terms. The school district does not have authority over a school district public library, and there are aspects of the law that guarantee some of those things. So when you read through it, you should be reading through it with that lens. We do not owe the school district anything.
Okay, is there any, moving on, is there any other new business? Okay, under old business, we have the building project update.
Okay, so there's a lot going on. As we mentioned last month, the estimate for the project came in significantly higher than what the board indicated the desired price and for the referendum was going to be. So we sent back the architects to propose some changes to the design. They also interacted with Schoolhouse, who is the library's construction manager, to look at things like constructability, what is actually involved in the construction of these things, what things can be done in order to make it less expensive, but that wouldn't substantially change the nature of whatever project, and look at those two things from a parallax sense of view. What are changes that they could propose to you that would allow for as much of the desired outcomes of the project to continue to happen, but still within the budget that the board set. So they have come back, the architects have come back. We had a brief update and a presentation on last Friday from them about that, and we gave them some feedback on how to simplify that presentation. And then we scheduled a building committee meeting for next week so that the architects and the construction managers can go over with you and tell you what changes are going to significantly move the needle to the tune of $4 or $5 million to bring the project cost of the project in. It will make it's not a secret that most of the substantive changes that would move the number like that are going to be in the front of the house. It's going to be in the new construction. It's going to be about, what does that look like? How large are those rooms? The seating, the dividers, all of those things, all of that's up. And they've given you all of those options as you try to come to a number that you can be comfortable with the project. Shrinking the rooms, changing the nature of the rooms where they are, that's all there. At the same time at the meeting, I was like, I just have this sense that all of the things that need to happen with the building, so boiler, parking lot, roof, asbestos abatement, fire alarm security, all of these absolutely essential pieces of the project that need to happen so this library can last for another 50 years. I said, this feels like it's about $20 million or $20 or $25 million. And I said, I'm a librarian, I'm not a construction person. And the construction manager says, you're definitely in the 20s. Just looking at, the structural, there's some wall structural things that need to happen in the building. Those things are expensive. When you redesign a boiler room to accommodate a modern boiler, those things are expensive. So
They're also the least visible to the public.
And this would, so I just said to them, give me an off the cuff answer, an educated off the cuff answer of what it would be if we just brought this library in a year and a half back and plopped it down, and it would be exactly this library in exactly the same configuration, but just new, right? New paint, new carpet, new walls, those necessary building changes, chase the asbestos out of the building, all of this stuff. It's like $20 or $25 million. So I'm reticent to have either the architects or Schoolhouse bird dog that number all the way out and give me a real construction estimate, we'd have to pay for. I'm reticent to do that, but just to set the stage, I think it's an important concept to set the stage that's just the amounts of dollars that we're talking about to fix some of the problems that we have with a 50-year-old building. So, and it doesn't address space, these rooms, and a lot of other issues. So I think that's an important thing to note. So with that, much of that building project discussion will happen at that building committee meeting next week. I don't want to speak for the architects. I'm not an architect. I want them to present to you and give you the real information about what your choices are moving forward with the project. But there's no doubt that it doesn't look, a redesign project in order to meet that budget will not include everything that's on our plans right now. There's going to be some substantial changes. Which is okay. It's just you have to talk about the strategies for what the best way is that we can present a product to the public that meets their needs.
Okay, and the timeline, did you want to discuss that?
Just we're the decision to come with a budget. If our goal is to move forward with December, we're going to have to move relatively quickly on making some amendments on that so that I can move forward and do everything that we need to do in order to set up an election in December. So time, we were really tight on time, and I know no one likes to get squeezed, me either, but we were squeezed on time. We got a little bit of a break while we went back and did this redesign, but we may find that squeeze time again coming up this week as we start hitting some deadlines.
Yep. So Jeff, just again, for the public kind of to synthesize.
Yeah.
What you were saying is that based on the discussions that you've had this week, what you're hearing is that even if we were to just do what is needed for the library, basic structural things to keep it running over the years, that is a ballpark, not a definite, but a ballpark 2/3, potentially more of the full budget that we're looking at. So 1/3 is really, I don't want to say extra, but improvements.
Yeah, again,
as opposed to what we'll call repairs.
Yeah.
Health and safety.
Yes.
Health and safety.
Really, and it's the asbestos has got to go. I mean, it just has to, and we could, and as an organization, we've had every version of this, so we could look at chunking it out and doing these projects piecemeal. We certainly had looked deeply at that as a board a long time ago and opted to not go in that direction. But it needs to get dealt with because it's not that it is an imminent danger to us or the public, but it is something that prevents us from moving forward on things as simple as running power or running piping or internet cables or all the things that we need in the places in the building because we can't work with it or near it, right? So, and the roof, I was here when the roof got replaced and it's gonna come around again, right? So it's time to start thinking about that roof. That doesn't make me feel young, but there it is. And, these are just some things, the parking lot, we've been talking about the parking lot for lots of years, as you look at it needs to be milled and resurfaced. We're not down to make some seal coating on it. It needs some major rehabs. And, that's just where we are with the building. It's not bad. It's a lovely building. It has stood the test of time very well. That boiler has to go and the room that houses the boiler has to be improved to allow the boiler to go. You can't just pop the boiler out, put a new boiler in. It doesn't meet code. So there's just a lot of things. Anytime you touch something substantially, we have to move things up to code. It's just the way that code works. And, things were built. There were some structural walls back on the backside of the building. They were built in a way that was perfectly acceptable at the time. They're not acceptable, right? So if you touch the building substantially, they have to get fixed. So
the next meeting to discuss that will be Monday, September 16th.
correct.
All right, are there any other questions or discussion before we move on? Okay, any other old business?
I think we have the meeting room policy.
Oh, I did not get that.
I would understand if you did. So on behalf of, I think, the board, I think we want to thank the staff for helping to implement this new policy. It's very hard when there's change, and this was the new policy was certainly a sea change. So thank you to the staff for that. And thank you to the public for paying attention to the new policy and working with it and getting to know it. I think as everyone knows, the public knows, the board has committed to review the policy quarterly for the first year. We recognize that this is an evolving process and we want to be as transparent about it as possible. So we had asked everyone to submit comments by today. We got some comments from the public. We have received those over the last few months. We have been, taking those into account. We had some comments from individual board members, and we also received, thank you to the staff for taking the time to put this together, offered their thoughts on the implementation of the policy and, the benefits that have come of that and some of the challenges that have come of that. And some of it is just troubleshooting, again, is recognizing the new and that everything takes time. And some of it are other technical and structural questions that the board needs to look at. So because we are at the point where we're asked to look at this policy, some of the comments, both from the public and from, namely, I think from the staff and from Jeff, I would include you in that bucket, I think the question on the slate today is whether we pursue at this moment structural changes to the policy, whether the board looks to the policy committee to look at more structural changes to the policy, or whether we decide at this moment to say, okay, we're going to look at technical changes and see how it plays out for another few months. The structural change that has been brought to the board by more than one party and that we'd like to consider tonight is the idea of eliminating the 3 categories potentially. And I want to say that everything that I say tonight is potentially impossible and under discussion. There have been no decisions made. Is the idea of potentially collapsing the 3 categories. Right now we have community organizations, we have facility contracts, and we have library card use. And we also have the 4th category of library sponsored activities, but that is a separate. Collapsing those into one kind of use, and that is for just library card users. There are a number of positives and negatives to that. The main positive being that streamlines the process. It makes it easier for the public. The negatives to that are that it provides a lot of technical challenges to a lot of things that have already been worked out in the policy, or that were worked out to address some of our concerns in the policy. In some ways, it can be more accessible for the public. In some ways, it can be less accessible for the public, especially the question of when we say card holder checkout, Bethlehem library card users, or Albany UHLS library card users. So there's a lot of questions there, but I think what we're looking for tonight is just discussion from the board, if any, over whether the policy committee should take the time to look into that kind of a change at this moment, or whether we think we still need to make any immediate technical changes that the staff has recommended and let this continue to play out and let the public and the staff adjust and look at it again in the new year, which is when the next quarterly review would be.
I think I'm going to vote for just technical changes, not radical changes at this point. I think it's too new and we need to play it out a little bit longer. That's my opinion.
Carolyn, I'm wondering, can you give an example of technical challenges or changes?
Sure. Like I would say Scrivener's errors in the policy, things where we just need to clarify the wording a little bit more, or maybe we need to, based on the software, we need to adjust the days, 1 or 2 here or there. Or I'm talking about very small edits to it. Nothing where we're saying we're overhauling this section.
When you mentioned that a negative to streamlining it by getting rid of those 3 categories, the negative was some technical challenges. So
and you know what, you're right. I shouldn't have used those words interchangeably. I think that the negative to it is that if we make those that large structural challenge, then we have to go through the whole policy to make sure that it matches that structural change. So I should say that's a drafting challenge. It's not an impossible one, a very feasible one, but certainly work for the policy committee, which we're not against. But I think the idea is that if we're going to pursue that, we don't want it to be for naught. We want somewhat of a consensus about whether that is worth our while at this moment.
I feel like I agree with Mark that it's been too short of a time period to really be able to tell. I think we need to wait at least 3 more months and then maybe we could talk about big changes, but I did want to ask a question that it seemed like the feedback was the most difficult thing to navigate was like the acknowledgement form. Can somebody just explain to me what that is or why that part was so?
Sure, happy to do it. So we've had a lot of experience explaining the acknowledgement form to people. So this is that form that we put together where either the group or the individual signs on behalf of, again, the group or the individual that they've read the policy. If they're a group and they're going under that group policy, they've watched the training video, they're attesting to that, they've done that, they're signing off on that. So the challenges have come from the fact that lots of groups have no idea what any of their 3 nonprofit numbers are. We give them resources for looking them up. We have people who imagined that their groups were nonprofits and officially registered and were not. They don't exist officially as an organization. That's the one particular challenge that I think the one group had was that they're not organized. They don't actually exist, so they don't meet under any of those things. A great example that we had, for instance, and I'll call them out on this because it's not their fault at all. They're awesome. The Girl Scouts meet here. So they have one 501c3 number that's for all Girl Scout troops in the Northeast. So one troop wants to meet here. They can meet here once a month. They meet here. Then another group that really has nothing to do with that Girl Scout group wants to meet. Well, they're only allowed to meet once a month because they've got the check on that. They've used that number has been used once already. So we've been able to say, well, go to room checkout. Mostly they're small things. So one group had a large event that was over 25 that they wanted to use the room for, but another group had already used that. We were able to move them, the staff member was able to move them to a room checkout because the other group was smaller, under the 25 limit, so they were able to move. So that it's the fact that they have to do an acknowledgement form. They come to us and they say, I want to book a space. So they go to the book a space section on the library website. And we think we've explained it in words that they need to do an acknowledgement form, but they don't want that to.
So really, it's not really the form. It's not like they can't find the form or the form is too complex. It's that part of filling out the form necessitates them to know information about their organization that they don't always know.
Yes, and that we've asked for it to be like a signed physical, like they print it out and they sign it and they send it to us. That's the way our policy is drafted. And one of the technical things is, can we somehow accept an electronic version of that acknowledgement form? Right? It's a small change, but it's the way the policy is written right now. It's not allowable.
Well, that may be one of the small policy changes that the committee could look at for organizations that have an umbrella, like the Girl Scouts, which are the Northeastern Council of the Girl Scouts, but they have many chapters. So that would be one of the small, if I'm understanding correctly, that would be a small change we could look at as opposed to one of the larger structural.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. And again, I have no thought either way. I just want, I want the staff to hear that we read that memo and that we are considering it and that we're discussing it. And I want the public to hear that we have seen and heard their comments and are considering it. So, like I said, this is all preliminary.
And the staff are awesome. I mean, so
Yeah.
she's doing just a ton of hand-holding for people. And some of that is new policy, new process. Some of that is an inherent confusion with the way the process is designed, and it's probably in the middle there someplace. But we're doing our level best, and she is absolutely doing her level best to make sure that the needs of our patrons are being met. So it's just, doesn't have to be that way. It can be a frustration for the individual, for the groups, a frustration.
So just to add, I fully agree, another 3 months, although I also fully expect that we will probably simplify things at the end of this. I do think it's not a long enough time period. I did have a couple of questions. The staff memo suggested either using the individual checkout or the community group, but it sounds like there's been if we were to change it, it would be to go to the card holder. Is there a reason why not one or the other? And also just remind me before, because I only did it once. Didn't we have, what did you have to be before? 'Cause
They needed to be nonprofit, but not a registered nonprofit. And that's really what it comes down to. If we go with the community group things, as we found out, some quite large groups, and I'll say the Bethlehem Art Association because they don't have money, but that's a quite large group. They meet here, they've been met here for years, do all good stuff. They're just not organized as an official organization. That's a decision that they made. Before, they met here just fine. They were doing nonprofit stuff. And that was the sort of back and forth that we had. We sort of had to talk it out with people as we tried to figure out, like, are you nonprofit? Which is not as easy, by the way, to tell. The way to tell is, do you meet one of these three criteria? And that is a challenge for some people to figure that out. It's work that we have to do, looking them up. We help people. That's what we do. So we find that information, but it's not always as simple as that because the names are however they are. And we're pretty good at keyword searching, but it's work that we have to do that didn't used to exist, that doesn't exist now. And I think if we went with nonprofit, there are certainly libraries that do that. Registered official nonprofits only, whether it's 501c3 or any of the three that we use, you're definitely going to cut off groups that don't meet that criteria. And it's okay.
And but I think the biggest difference before is that it was not for profit groups, but we did not define
No,
the
because
term.
I didn't have,
not
the
for
group
profit.
I had was not a registered
Yeah.
nonprofit, but our mission was just a loosely formed group.
Yeah, and a lot of the purpose of the definition was and a lot of the purpose of most things in the policy was to remove as much discretion from the staff. So while this has created work for the staff, no doubt,
Yes.
it also provides structure. It also provides a clear, objective definition, either you are or you aren't.
Right.
To go by.
So the
Another-
choice, sorry,
Yeah.
just the choice to potentially go with the individual is to make it just simpler? Is that the reason?
Yeah, because they're, I think
I'm sorry, I actually couldn't hear Laura's.
Sorry,
question.
because the staff memo said, choose one or the other, individual checkout or community group, but it sounds like a subsequent discussion was leaning towards, if we were to streamline to one group, it would be the individual checkout. And I just wanted to understand the thought behind that, but I think I get it. I mean, there are some definite negatives like responsibility and everything, but we're not doing that today.
I think it's also more inclusive.
Yeah.
Viewed it as more inclusive as.
Right.
And in any card, that card holders then that privilege is then extended to a card holder, however we define card holder, as opposed to being a part of a group.
We want people to use the library community room as much as they need to use it. One of my questions we would have to look at in the committee is about mobility. So let's say I sign up for a room, I have a group that's not a registered nonprofit.
Right.
And so say it's a craft group and somebody there cuts themselves pretty severely. So likely they're not only going to sue me, but are they also going to come after the library? And so if we go to an individual kind of sign up, I'm not opposed to that, but it's a question I would really want to understand so that I could protect the library from being sued for something they had nothing to do with, essentially.
And it's also a question for the person who takes out, whose card signs out the room, is that I think that sometimes members of the public maybe don't appreciate that the community room aspect or the community organization aspect of this is to some extent intended to protect the individual, that the group then becomes responsible for anything that happens at the meeting. If we were to move to a library card holder system, the individual becomes responsible for what happens at the meeting if they have chosen to bring in a group. So to your point, someone is injured because of negligence, because someone is acting irresponsibly at the meeting. They get cut by something they shouldn't be using to cut, whatever. Potentially that individual is responsible as opposed to the not-for-profit group. So
Well,
that is a
I mean, if it
challenge.
was a real nonprofit, they're not, they're gonna be responsible.
no, but I'm saying that under the new, if we were to switch to library card, yeah.
And in the reality,
You're only gonna be responsible if they actually have insurance.
right, I'm saying a real,
Does not.
no, I understand. I mean, a fully functioning, nonprofit that has insurance and whatnot, they're
But
gonna,
I do want to repeat, it's not that we don't want people to use the library. We're just trying to find the
Yeah.
best way to.
Yeah. Let's bring it down a notch in terms of individual responsibility. Let's not worst case scenario it. Let's say that you've used your library card to take out a room and you have brought in a group, and that group is selling books, or that group is, smoking tobacco or doing something that is very obviously against the policy. Then you, the individual, suffer the consequences of going against the policy. So you, the individual, then potentially bear the responsibility of not being able to use the room for a year as opposed to the group.
Yeah, I mean, it's
The tough one.
Yeah.
it is a tough one. And, the
I was just gonna weigh in and say, I agree that we need to have a little bit more experience under our belt before we decide to make some significant changes in any direction, really. I mean, I think the tweaking is fine. Clearing up where it's easy to clear up and where it's like, almost housekeeping kind of things, but for the amount of work that we put into creating the policy, I am reticent to really say 3 months experience is enough for me to say, we need to kind of cut it back and make it a little more easy for people to use. I think some of our experience has been, and what we've learned is people weren't really adhering to some of the policies previously. And that's also some of the problems. So
Right, and I think that acknowledgement form, the best part of the acknowledgement form is that people are much more aware of what the policy is in the library and what are allowed and not allowed activities. I think
Right.
some people were surprised by that, right? So that's just a sign that it did its job in
Yeah.
informing them about the nature of the thing. And I think the other, some of the experience that we have gained is the fact that we took a policy that was written, and then we have to squeeze it into a software that exists. And some of the things we thought that the software that were indicated by our software company that could be accommodated, were not able to be accommodated. So we're doing some things manually that would be best if they were able to be done by the software, but just the software is designed for libraries across the country, and it's not specifically written for Bethel.
Well, and I'm hoping that it seems likely that a lot of groups are repeat groups, right? So this is destined to be the worst time. Once they've had their first outing where they found their number and whatever, subsequent reservations hopefully will go smoother, right? So maybe the next 3 months will be better.
I mean, I'll say I'm not against looking at the policy for structural changes, but I agree with what seems to be a large consensus that we need more time. I also think that allowing more time to let the policy play out will also identify further things that we can improve. So I think we want to strike a balance here between not letting it go and just saying, oh, it'll be fine, but also not waiting long enough to identify everything that can be identified by time. So.
And I do just want to mention that the owner association who approached us will be coming up against a deadline where they not be able to use the room starting in the new year at the higher capacity. It's just I think it's important that everybody know that. So
And just kind of on that note, and I think you said this, Sarah, is that a lot of the issues that have come up here have been about individual groups, governance and organization. And I think everyone here on the library board takes the position that the library we do not weigh in on those issues. Those are those issues for them to work out.
Yeah.
They can make their choices, but as the policy has its definitions, and there are actions they can take to meet them if they so choose.
Right, and I know there's a lot of eyes on the policy, so we're following the policy. So I just, so that you all know, we're following the policy. We are working to inform as much as possible so that as many people can find the path that fits under the policy and allows for the use. Because again, Gail, you're right. We want people using the rooms, but that some people, we may come up against a hard deadline, and that can be upsetting to people. So just,
Okay, so I see a lot of head nodding around the table, and it sounds like we will revisit, we'll leave the meeting policy as it stands, and we'll revisit again next quarter, which will bring us to December. Lots of things going on in December.
And in the interim, the policy committee will work with Jeff to address technical changes and other questions that we can bring forward.
Thanks. All right, any other old business? All right, next one is future business. Any?
I'll just mention, Gail and I and others on the building education committee will be anxiously awaiting the results of Monday's building meeting, because I think, we're sort of a little bit in a holding pattern, and Kristen is doing a great job moving forward in, developing content, getting quotes on printed materials, so that when we have some solid answers to things and know what we're publicizing, we'll be in a good position to publicize it. But, I expect that after the 16th meeting, that subcommittee might want to regroup, depending on kind of some of the decisions that are made at that meeting. So that's just on the horizon, I think, also.
Great, thanks, Laura. All right, any other future business? Okay, public participation. Have any, do we do online public participation?
We do.
any longer?
Let me check. Yep, they're all there. It's, give me a second. It doesn't have, so sometimes I forget, but thank you for the reminder. Nothing
Okay.
electronic.
All right, then I will take a motion for adjournment of tonight's Board of Trustees meeting.
So moved.
I'm shocked, and I will second the motion.
In favor? All right, meeting is adjourned. The next board meeting will be Tuesday, October 15th at 6 p.m. We have the building committee on Monday, September 6th.